Welcome to the What's Your Deal podcast, where we discuss business acquisitions, investments, management, and exit strategies. I'm your host, Matt Uhler. Let's dive in. Welcome back to another episode of What's Your Deal. Today, my guest is Brian Samson, founder of Plugg Technologies, where he helps U.S. companies scale by building high-performing teams across Latin America. Brian's perspective comes from firsthand experience. He moved to Buenos Aires and built an 80-person team from the ground up. Over the years, he's helped grow companies from startup stage to millions in revenue and guided talent strategy through IPOs and acquisitions. He also hosts the Nearshoring Cafe podcast. And outside of business, he and his wife are foster care advocates and adoptive parents. Brian, welcome to What's Your Deal?
I am excited to be here, Matt. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm intrigued by the topic we're going to talk about today. So why don't we just start for people who might not be familiar with nearshoring? What is that exactly? And can you kind of guide us through why it can be so
Yeah,
powerful?
yeah, totally. We're coming from the States, and I think, we tend to look at the world from what it's like to be, in America. So for us, I bet your audience has heard of offshoring, and offshoring's existed forever. And the big three countries that come to mind when we think about offshoring are China, India, and the Philippines.
Mm-hmm.
So you look at the Philippines, amazing back office, customer service, medical billers, VAs, all that stuff. You look at China, it's a beautiful set you have. I'd argue or speculate maybe some of that stuff was made in China, just like the stuff in my background.
Uh-huh.
China's the world's factory. And then you've got India, which is really the IT department, for the world. So they're graduating more computer science grads than some countries have population every year. Just a
Wow.
massive talent there. Now, Asia is a hotspot for offshoring because it does really well when it comes to price. But there's one thing, and I'm sure your audience can attest to, that gives Asia a disadvantage. And we've got this giant Pacific Ocean in the middle. And time zone is rough.
Mm-hmm.
Time zone is really rough when you're working with Asia. I've talked to a lot of people that have done calls at 2 in the morning, or they've just had to totally adjust their schedule. Or more commonly, they'll give instructions, right at the end of the day, like this is what I want to happen with this design or this spec or this scope, and they send it over email, and they just kind of cross their fingers that the person fully understood it. It's all going to be smooth and like waiting for them in their inbox when they get back. That doesn't always happen. It happens the wrong way more often than not. So, the cost wins, but if you're not getting the work done in the timely matter, you start looking elsewhere. And this is what has really driven nearshore. So for us, again, for US, nearshoring is Latin America. There's no ocean in between the US and Latin America. You can go right down to Mexico. You can, take a flight all the way to Brazil or Argentina, and everything's basically on the same time zone. So again, with all those examples we just talked about, if you send an email, you'll get a response back right away. And the sun's up for everybody. So no one's, gonna burn out because they're working third shift hours. If you have a quick question, you jump right on WhatsApp or Slack or Zoom or whatever, and you figure it out right there in the moment. So there's been a lot of interest and demand in nearshoring and Latin America, with time zone being the center attraction of all that.
Huh. And so is that increasing again with the other countries you talked about and their popularity? Are you seeing more of a trend towards nearshoring as an option?
Yeah, so we're seeing two drivers, for nearshoring. So the first is we're seeing just fatigue from Asia, and people want work done kind of on their time zone. And COVID really accelerated that. Uh, there was this kind of rubber band effect of, okay, we can be remote. And then everyone wanted to move to Indonesia, right?
Uh-huh.
Or, Bali and work on the beach. But companies started to realize, wait, hold on a second, we need to have some sort of controls around this. So time zone, whether you're, onshore in just another city in the States or near shore, I think really became critical. The second is geopolitics. Uh, for it doesn't matter, where you are on the political fence, who's in office matters, and certain countries are going to benefit more than others. Right now, China's kind of in the doghouse. Uh, India is kind of in the doghouse. So there's been a lot more investment demand. I'll give you a story. I was on a flight recently from San Francisco, California to Monterrey, Mexico, and the flight was almost entirely guys from Korea. Now, why
Interesting.
is that? Because there are Korean auto executives like Hyundai, Kia, that were running factories in Monterrey, Mexico, where maybe, in the past they would have done a lot of the manufacturing in Asia or China.
Hmm.
Mexico's really kind of fueled that. And the administration is rewarding Latin America. There's a lot more friendships. You even see things like what's going on in Venezuela. There's more U.S. investment there. So as the current administration is kind of pumping up Latin America, there are winners and there are losers. And right now, Asia is kind of on the losing side of that coin.
Okay. And so in your role, you're helping to connect the dots for people. Maybe you can walk us through how you help facilitate this. And I'm assuming that also would eliminate some of the concern about what somebody's actually going to get. And I can speak to that personally. But yeah, why don't you share with us your role and
Yeah,
how you
yeah.
help?
Yeah, sure. So I'm the founder of a company called Plugg Technologies with two G's, Plugg Technologies. And I've spent the last 11 years kind of working in Latin America personally. I live there, but really as an ambassador for shedding the spotlight. There's a lot of people, myself included, 11 years ago, I didn't give Latin America a second thought. And you just keep caring about different talent pockets around the world. Asia, we talked about,
Hmm.
Eastern Europe, even Africa is kind of on the radar now. Nigeria is an English-speaking country with a big population. And we all kind of forgot about Latin America. So where my role has been is helping people and helping companies find what I think is the world's greatest leverage, the world's greatest arbitrage in Latin America. So my company does everything from sourcing the talent, just like you might get a job rec, like you're a company in Dallas and you're hiring in Houston. You put a job description together, a recruiter helps you find candidates. We do the same thing. But we'll also provide a lot of advice on where, because Latin America is a big place. Not all countries are the same. And it's easy to just kind of think that's all one big country. But Brazil and Chile and Uruguay and Argentina and Colombia and so forth, they all have their own flavors and superpowers and constraints.
Okay.
So we'll give advice on do you want to hire one or potentially many? Um, uh, do you want legacy technology? Do you want a VA? Do you want a call center? Do you want AI engineers and data engineers? So we know that different talent pockets and cities. Do you want to ship laptops there? Because some countries have high tariffs and complicated customs. So, for example, getting a MacBook in Argentina or Brazil could be three times the cost of what it is in the States.
Really?
Yep. And, sometimes there's inflation and currency volatility. And these are, normal constraints that every country has. And we'll provide advice on where they should look, where they can get the best value that fits with their long-term strategy. We'll source candidates just like usual. Give the company that's hiring a couple to choose from. They pick the best one. Hopefully, we've got a winner, and then we take it from there in terms of onboarding, getting everybody all ready to contribute, and we'll make sure that they get paid properly. The one key element that we do is once we have that person in the seat, we step aside. We try to get out of the way because the most effective talent partnerships with the Latin America talent and the US company happens when they're working directly. That's where the magic happens. If everything kind of has to flow through us and then to the consultant, it's like a game of telephone, just like you're in Dallas and you're giving instructions to the person in Houston, but there's, somebody in the middle, stuff gets lost, right?
Yeah,
So we get out of the way and you can have a direct relationship with that person, but you'll never have to worry about currency volatility or compliance or any of that stuff because we've got it all covered.
I see. So are you like a temporary employment agency then, essentially, but you just have this focus of talent and employees in another country?
That's exactly right.
Okay,
Although temporary can be pretty long term in this world.
that makes sense.
We've had a few people that have been they're going on their third year, on a project, right? And
Okay.
it gets sticky, and good talent's hard to find, especially good talent at a reasonable price on your time zone.
Hmm.
So a lot of these clients will just continue to renew and renew and renew and hope that person stays forever.
Great. So I know when we've looked, myself and one of my business partners have looked at talent in other places. We got very skeptical at like, okay, well, who are we sending our stuff to, and what does that really mean? And we pulled back from that a couple of times. So do you see that concern? Or that concern should be eliminated with with you being an intermediary, or how does that help?
Oh, sure. And maybe to flesh out your question a little bit,
Yeah.
Matt, maybe like IP, like is someone going to steal my information?
Uh huh.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Yeah. Common concern. I think we'll see that concern a lot more with China or Russia, where the State Department has done a lot of vetting. Uh, in Latin America, it's actually really amazing to see the legal precedents are very aligned with how we all do business in the States. So everything has kind of been organized around that. And the role that we play is strictly work for hire. So all the IP that that engineer does is now owned by the client, by our
Okay.
customer.
Uh huh.
And we've got a whole chain of control, with IP transfers and with that. But we also have the necessary IT protocols and systems, tools like Jump Cloud, which allow us to instantly turn off a machine or
Oh.
take that out of circulation, and that really protects things that are most valuable.
Okay. Well, that's great. So maybe you can give us an example of a typical customer you might have and how many people they might want, and what does that look like?
Yeah.
Our audience, just to give you more perspective, is aspiring business owners, sometimes people who own a business and may be looking at exiting. But in almost all of those categories, help is important. So yeah, give us an idea of what this looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. So uh, I think there's probably three different types of customers that we'll work with. Um, on the small side, we'll work with maybe like early stage agencies, service business owners, and they just need a little bit of leverage. So maybe it could be a virtual assistant or somebody to help with back office operations. And these are companies that are less than 10 people. The founder, the owner is pretty hands-on, but they just need somebody they can really rely on. And we've had quite a few success stories where, and I think what was kind of unique is in every case, it was the first time that owners ever nearshored before. They
Hmm.
hadn't really thought about Latin America. So it was this like brand new, I guess I'll try it out, I'll test it, I'll do a pilot. which by the way is perfectly fine with us because we believe so strongly in the product that we're, give it a try for a week or two, right? And the talent, by the way, is a lot of them are trained in AI and all the modern technologies. So they can sink their teeth right into your business and do a lot of problem solving and creative workflows. But anyway, we'll work with those hands-on founders and these nearshore resources. The talent almost becomes like the right-hand person
Mm,
for that small business owner. The second is maybe that business that's like a little bit more mid-stage. And even in the first example, there are platforms out there like Upwork and Fiverr, and certainly, no shame in going there. What a lot of business owners might not know is that there's certainly a lot of talent there, but most of the best talent in Latin America is not on those platforms because a few years ago, Upwork and Fiverr put a lot of the fee burden on the actual talent instead of the companies.
interesting.
So if you're a senior level person, and that's who we're working with, by the way, we're not hiring, junior level software engineers or junior level, VAs. We're working with senior level people because that's the price point that equates to a junior person in the States. But anyway, uh, because that senior talent doesn't want to work through these platforms, they'll work with recruiters that don't take anything from them. All of our fees are company specific.
Okay.
Uh, so uh, there are these mid-sized companies, that have kind of grown beyond that 10 person. They're thinking about scaling, maybe they want to hire pods, teams, so forth, more than one person. And it's really, they're really looking to us to help work with them on that whole strategy, in a linear way. So as we think about not just one, but hey, we should really look at a country like Bolivia, Coach Obama, Bolivia. Uh, there's enough of a talent pocket for this type of skill set, and we can grow your team together with you. I'm the last one. We're lucky enough where we've got some nice validation. We do about 100 placements every year.
Okay.
Uh, and we've got a few billion-dollar companies that are clients, and they're hiring not just one or a pod, but many, many. And we're able to make that work, with the systems and the optionality that they're looking for.
That's great. So where do people go wrong in this? I mean, obviously, if they've got you guiding them through it, that they shouldn't have that issue. But what are some of the challenges people do face using nearshoring options?
Yeah, I think the biggest maybe like faux pas that companies will have is something that, by the way, could happen even if it's like you're a company in Boston and you're hiring people in Alabama, right?
Uh
Like there's
huh.
just a cultural differences. And sometimes there can be like an us versus them, or they're like these guys outside the country, and we'll just throw work over the wall at them. But I think we forget how really talented these candidates are. How really talented this candidate pool really is. Um, and something that we might not even recognize because growing up in the States, life is pretty good. I'm not going to say it's perfect, but it's pretty good. But in Latin America, a lot of times there's really bad leadership. I'll just put it like that. Wild swings of currency, crazy inflation, dictators, whatever, cartels, like
Hmm.
things we hear about in the news. These are all true, but we tend to put the blame on the whole country, but really it's a select few people at the top that are just making very bad decisions. Now this the population then is a byproduct of all these poor decisions and wild environment. So as a result, they're able to grow up in with this kind of innate ability to be scrappy, flexible, adaptable, really good problem solvers. They find creative workarounds. When things get chaotic, they're the most calm people in the room because, like, hey, this is a Tuesday for them. They've seen
Uh-huh.
it. You know, you're all freaked out as the business owner. No sweat. We got this. So I think that's a another common, misperception of, hey, like I heard there's some cartels in Mexico, so the whole population must be, in that business. It's just a very small percentage of the population. There's a lot of people that are very, very hardworking and they bring all those attributes to the table. And by the way, I can't think of a single business owner that wouldn't want their team members to have those attributes, to be scrappy, flexible, good problem solvers, creative thinkers, all that.
That's true. And so when you're sourcing the connection, when you're making the connection, are you oftentimes working with a company in Latin America that does employ people and they're your source, or are you literally going to individuals who are looking for work?
Yeah, we have we're a US company, but we have all the infrastructure in Latin America. So we have operations, bilingual operations people. We have recruiters all throughout Latin America. So they've got these really deep networks that they're recruiters and operations people for Plug. They're our team members, and we've built up enough credibility and track record where a lot of candidates know who we are, they trust us, and they get back to us when we reach out about an interesting opportunity.
That's great. And so does it take somebody, I mean, if our company, my company called you today and said, listen, I'm interested in this, what's the process? You're vetting us
Yeah,
some, it takes you some time, and walk us through that if you would.
yeah, great question. So the very first call that we'll have will kind of be a two-parter. We'll want to get the job description, of course, just like any recruiting company would want to get, what are you trying to hire for, Matt? The second part is kind of what we hit on before of how many people do you want to hire? What's your longer term strategy? Are you thinking about moving people, say, we get a lot of requests to move their operations from Asia to Latin America
Huh.
because the time zone, is such a drag. Or maybe it's a brand new position. Is it going to be one or many? Uh, do you want to travel there? Do you want a physical office or people work remotely? What kind of price point and budget? We all have, different budgets and we want to respect that. And I'll give you an example. Costa Rica and Nicaragua are neighbors, right? Nicaragua is a lot less expensive than Costa Rica, but if you ever travel to Costa Rica, it's pretty developed.
Hmm.
You know, Obviously a lot of great tourism, but Intel, Microsoft, a lot of big companies have been there for a long time. And you've got this really developed, mature country. Nicaragua is a little more developing, so therefore there's lower prices. So we'll advise on, where the right place to hire from.
Okay.
We're fast because we've got this great network already. Generally within 3 days, you'll start to see some candidates. And of course, like we'll have screened them, vetted them, checked them for English, price point, availability, technical skills, all that. So in your inbox, you'll have a few candidates to choose from. And then from there, we'll help schedule the interviews. And the hiring process is usually like we would hire somebody here in the States. A phone call or two, a Zoom meeting, which kind of acts as the face-to-face,
Uh-huh.
nowadays. And if we've found our winner, we'll go ahead and close that candidate. You'll work with us on a MSA and a statement of work. Pretty typical, if you hire a company to do this. So all that is just like normal. And then what's happening behind the scenes is we'll do all the onboarding, compliance for that country. We'll get that person set up on all the proper systems. And it's usually just a matter of days from whenever they have to give their notice, where they're ready to go and they start their first day at your company. And then you just hear from us on a monthly basis, of course, to make sure everything's going well. But the invoice, you'll
Hmm.
just get an invoice for when that person worked, and we'll cover all the payment for them. But otherwise, once we make that placement, we're sincere that the best relationships, the best placements are when there's a great relationship between our client, the hiring manager, and the actual person in Latin America.
Yeah, that sure makes sense. And from a cost perspective, what kind of differentiation is there between what you might
Yeah,
hire that same role, and maybe you can give an example of a role?
yeah, absolutely. So I'll say this, Latin America is not going to beat Asia on price,
Okay.
but it's also not crazy more expensive than Asia. It's somewhere in the middle. So if you're going to hire in the States, you're going to hire in Asia, Latin America kind of lands right there in the middle. And to your request, I will give some real numbers here. So if you're going to hire, let's say, we'll take a crazy city like San Francisco where everything,
Uh huh.
auto toast is $25. So software engineers there are, 200, $300,000, right? A year. And then you add the fully loaded cost because it's not just the salary. You've got FICA, you've got benefits, all the other stuff that you might offer, and then like the overhead that gets absorbed into that person, the recruiting and so forth. So let's call it $150 an hour, is kind of your all-in cost.
Hmm.
You might be able to find someone similar in India for like 20 to $25 an hour. Now, of course, there are people that will do it for $9 or $10 an hour. It doesn't mean that they're going to hit your hiring bar,
Uh huh.
right? In Latin America, like a fully all-inclusive rate. So this is, Plug finding that candidate, adding our, overhead, margin, so forth. You're still looking about 50 to $55 an hour, like all in. There's no other cost. So that person's going to be about one third of what you'd be paying for that person in San Francisco. Now, not every city in the U.S. is as expensive as San Francisco.
Hmm.
So, take Chicago, where I'm from originally. Maybe that software engineer in Chicago is $120,000 a year. Add the burden, so maybe it's more like $75 an hour. But it's still almost 50% more to hire that engineer in Chicago than it is to hire them. And I got those comments a lot from friends of mine that were CTOs right when COVID hit.
Uh huh.
And they would come to me and say, "Hey, Brian, like we're not working in the office anymore. So I've got this guy in San Jose that I'm paying $220,000 a year for, but like we're not in the office together anymore. Can you can you beat that?" I'm like, "Yep." In 3 days, we found him somebody for that was just as good. Now, this was the key thing. We checked back in a few months later. He's just as good as my San Jose guy,
Wow.
the one that we found them in Argentina. So oftentimes when you're looking at Asia, you're kind of thinking like, okay, it's cheaper, but what's the catch?
Hmm.
Catch is you've got this time zone issue. And also sometimes there's communication issues, although they speak English. You're always wondering like, is it fully landing? Are they speaking my type of English? Sometimes there's a lot of hierarchical systems where uh, if they think you're not making the right decision, they'll never tell you. In Latin America, they will. So there's a lot of, passionate people that want to share their ideas. And I think a lot of business owners also want to hear that. They're used to these horizontal hierarchies. So when I think about the cost, there's the monetary cost, but then there's also the other ancillary things of days that I'm not going to lose because I might lose minutes, not days, when
Hmm.
we're in the middle of a project. I think of dedicated, loyal people. The tenure in Latin America is often, 3, 4 years on a given assignment. So they're not quitting every 6 months to take another job that pays better. There's a lot of loyalty. So again, monetary cost and then the whole ancillary cost, I think it's a no-brainer.
Okay. Yeah, it sure sounds fascinating. And obviously there's certain skill sets that can are favored towards being remote and others that are not, right? And
Yeah.
so that's the kind of the criteria you work within. And from a standpoint of the I mean, being so remote, I mean, have you had situations where somebody's working with somebody and then they just literally disappear? They're gone. You can't find them. You can't connect with them. And does that create concern, or how do you deal with that kind of thing when it just feels so distant?
Good question. So we've done over 500 placements in our history with
Okay.
Plug. I can think of one time that happened.
Really?
So 1 out of 500 is pretty good
Pretty
odds
small percentage. Yeah.
of
Yeah.
somebody kind of ghosting. And I think eventually we tracked that person down. It was kind of a weird issue, but needless to say, the probability of that happening is extremely low due to the culture.
Okay.
They're a very proud people there. They want to save face. They want to do good work.
Okay. And then how did you end up in this? I know you spent some time in Latin America, but did it just develop for you in that way and you saw the need?
Yeah, yeah, it's kind of a funny story. My wife, I met her in San Francisco, California, and she grew up as a daughter of an expat. Her dad worked in the hotel industry, so she grew up in Asia. And I grew up in Chicago, and we would take family vacations to Wisconsin. I didn't have a very big worldly view.
Uh-huh.
And, when I met her, I was just really excited for some adventure. And we were originally looking to do Asia. We wanted to do Singapore or Shanghai or something like that. But while this is all developing, I met an investor, had a thesis for a business, and actually raised some money. So I raised about $2 million. And again, in San Francisco, that doesn't get you super far.
Right.
I was like, okay, like we can hire 1.5 people,
Yeah.
so it just wasn't going to work out. The math wasn't mathing. So I decided to put sales in San Francisco. My wife and I have 2 kids today, but at the time, no kids, looking for some adventure. So we got rid of our apartment and put everything we needed, and we each had one big suitcase and a backpack. We moved to Buenos Aires, and it was awesome. And of course, there's like an element of doing business on hard mode. Argentina, for those that don't know, on the scale of like ease of doing business, Singapore is like first in the world. Argentina is like 160th. So it's hard. There's a lot
Wow.
of ambiguity, a lot of crossing your fingers and praying that your paperwork's going to go through on time. A lot of gray area ambiguity. But went down there with effectively nothing but some money and hired first person I hired was a recruiter because I wanted access to this community.
Uh-huh.
Then we hired an operations person. Then we met our soon-to-be CTO, who then knew a lot of people. And before we knew it, we had an office. They eat a lot of steak in Argentina. So we even had our own grill on the balcony in our office. And every Friday, we had a guy who was an engineer, but he loved to grill. So on Friday, around like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, he would disappear to go to the butcher shop. Argentina is just like Europe, where there's not giant supermarkets. There's the bread store, the meat store, the fruit stand. And he would come back, like a caveman, like back in the day where he's hauling. So he would come back with, just dozens of pounds of meat. And then every Friday we would have beers and wine. Wine is fantastic there, Malbec. and just grill a lot of meat. So we had a lot of fun, but I'm not going to say it was easy. Inflation's high there. There's a lot of ambiguity in how business is done. There's labor strikes and things like that. But we made it work, grew to an 85 engineer, profitable business. And I later sold my shares in that, so I didn't have to travel so much. We had eventually moved back to the States,
Oh,
started building our family. But I've just been a huge ambassador of Latin America ever since, and I've started two other companies. And obviously Plugg is the one that I spend the most time on there.
okay. Well, that's great. So do you end up traveling back there quite a bit now as a fundamental aspect of the business?
Yeah,
Yeah.
not so much anymore. And I think part of it has to do with I actually happen to live in Oahu, Hawaii,
Oh, okay.
so it's a little bit of a flight just to get anywhere.
Uh-huh.
Uh, but we also have a great team of people that live a lot closer, are able to do it, and some really great leaders and managers in Latin America as well. So they've got things covered. I'm not like living in this anxiety where I wake up and what went wrong. These guys, they see a problem and they fix it usually before I've even woken up.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Well, it sounds like an extraordinary service you provide, and I could see it taking some creativity to figure out how that might work for a small business owner, but it's a great resource to have access to. And so I've got two questions for you here before we wrap up. One is, a lot of people who got where they wanted to go had somebody that gave them a hand along the way. Can you share a quick story about somebody who gave you a hand up along your way or paid something forward to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, Plenty of people. Wow, this is going to be hard. I feel like the people at the Oscars that if I
Right.
they've got to just pick one. But I had a boss when I was in San Francisco, and I was an internal employee for a tech startup, and he was one of the co-founders, and just really kind of took me under his wing. I had a million questions about finance and term sheets and structures, and every Friday we had our one-on-one, and it was like 5 minutes about, hey, I'm on top of everything, boss, don't worry. And then 55 minutes of, I've got all these questions about, the world outside my role. And he was very patient and took a lot of time to answer.
Oh, that's great. That's great. And the second question, so how do people find you and access the service that you offer?
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity there. Plugg.tech, Plugg.tech goes right to our website,
Okay.
and there's a contact us form. And just like I shared on the show, we do calls all the time of people that are kind of nearshore curious. They've never tried it before. They just want to learn, like, if I were to do this, where would I go? What country? What role? What does it cost? Don't worry, we do these conversations all the time.
That's great. That's good to know. Well, I sure appreciate you joining us today and shining some light onto this whole idea of nearshoring and how it can be beneficial. And COVID really did change people's perspective about being able to work remote. And so my guess is that was a big change for your business as well, breathing some more life into the concept just in general.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We've definitely been beneficiaries and seeing wind in our sails.
That's great. Well, thanks again for joining us, and we wish you the best in your future.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. And that's a wrap on today's episode. We hope you enjoyed the conversation and got some valuable insights into the world of buying and selling businesses. Want to be a guest on our show? If you have a deal that you'd like to discuss with us or a business story to share, we'd love to hear from you. Shoot us an email using the contact information below in the episode notes, and let's make this happen. Never miss an episode. Make sure you subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. And if you found today's episode helpful, please leave us a review. It helps more people like you find the show.